Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to our first ever live stream from Site Network. My name is Graham Stevens. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Site Network, and I'm joined today by Damien Pike, our CEO,
Hello.
by David Syme, our CTO,
Hi there.
and by special guest Matt Scibilia, who is from Parallel Worlds.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hi, so today's topic is on gamification as a way of starting the stream. And Matt, I know you have a long history with gaming and gamification. So do you want to start by just explaining a little bit about your background and also how you came to join Parallel Worlds as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's about 40 years ago that I started in video games as a senior art director. And over the 40 years, 30 of them being my own companies as CEO, executive producer, designer, etc., have worked on over 250 games for major publishers, for small publishers, for governments, and actually ad agencies as well. So one of the things that is part of my career background is that if you can think of how to use games, whether it's serious training or some kind of advert gaming or SpongeBob SquarePants, Call of Duty, Civilization, strategy games, the whole nine yards, mobile and consoles, PCs, every platform, every type of game, every pretty much every publisher on the planet I've worked with. That's what comes with being a silverback in the industry. I just won't leave. But that's right now, as far as the Parallel Worlds relationship, I've been working with Brian and Jamie and the team at Parallel Worlds for a little over a year as a creative consultant advisor, primarily due to the fact of this background within the gaming space. Along with that, we've looked at several iterations before we met Site Network Group, which we looked at as an extremely exciting moment because the actualization of our relationships and our strengths, I kind of come along as an advisor, but we've been discussing folding in as things go. I do have other ventures in the games space, but extremely excited about digital twinning of locations and embedded entertainments, embedded experiences, utilizing game methodology.
And what's really interesting to me about gamification is just how prevalent it is in other industries now. And you see it in everything from how KFC and McDonald's engage their clients all the way down to how tourist attractions increase engagement. Have you seen quite a big leap in terms of the adaptation and utilization of gamification in different industries?
Yes, being in it long enough, it's almost like when I got into games, there wasn't a telephone and there were no cars. Everybody was in horse-drawn. Uh, the first game that I did had four colors on a green phosphor monitor, which was bright green, dull green, black, and transparent. Uh, so we've come an extremely long way. And one of the things that, as a game designer, that excites me is seeing things like cell phones and kiosks at the bank, and just the way that game thought and game logic is being utilized to not only inform the user but engage the user so that they're embedded in the experience, they're embedded in the transactions, and it becomes a facility that when you don't have your phone or you don't have your iPad or you don't have your PC, you're kind of, how did I used to do this before technology? Mm-hmm. And that's what game gives us. When a 3-year-old knows how to use an iPhone, and you got to make sure they don't buy a lot of stuff, that it's been designed specifically to be utilized by the human human beings. When a grandmother, my mother at 93, was on video calls and wasn't as quite as facile half the time. For only the top of her head was on camera, but she did have uh, the ability to utilize software. And she, instead of just being in a little room in Arizona, had the world at her feet. She could go anywhere. She could talk to anyone. So the loneliness and the isolation of the human being, utilizing game methodology, which gives you an experiential depth of interaction, and then with the technology that connects you, across the globe, is just phenomenal technology. Wouldn't exist, in my opinion, without games. Showing that games not only create a direct experiential interaction where I feel like I've gone somewhere, I've done something, I've earned something, and put that in real world transactions so that when we do go online and we go shopping, it is a shopping experience. It's a direct shopping experience. When I get on Google Maps and I go to a location, I get on Street View and I'm experiencing it directly. The only thing missing there is what we're talking about. I want to directly interact with what I'm seeing. And that's where, again, game is a natural process. It's been designed to be as close to the way we relate to the world and the universe and knowledge, so that it feels real. It feels in some cases more real. And I found myself trying to press a button out in the real world to get more information about something. Then you have to, I have to go to my phone. But if I had that, just tap that button and get that information, it's a natural progression. We're going to see this to a point where right now everyone's embracing it. When you see any type of thing, not just promotional but informational, knowledge transactions utilizing game methodology, giving you a touch of experience so that it stays with you. It's not just something you have to look up in the yellow pages. It's something that now becomes part of you in terms of your experience.
And one of the interesting things about it becoming so prevalent is, in order for your gamification or your game strategy to stand out, it has to be done really well. Have you seen some good examples of where gamification's been used effectively, and also on the reverse? Have you seen some examples of where there's been an attempt to use gamification as a way of engaging users or customers, but it's failed, and the reasons for that failure, perhaps?
Yeah, one of the main aspects of game methodology or gamification is that the delivery system must be solid. So when you have, an interaction, let's say, just as an example, Pokemon Go was extremely successful. And it was relying on your phone, whatever hardware you had. So the developers had to make sure that it was optimized for your old Android, your new iPhone, and that the experience was essentially equivalent across platform. That developer did an excellent job. Everyone felt that they were involved with Pokemon Go at a direct equivalent level of performance, because it was a contest. It was a bit of a contest. You're going to these locations to capture your monsters. Well, you don't want to have it suddenly glitch and you either lose signal, lose connection, lose all these things, and you lose your prizes, you lose your benefits. So Pokemon Go, great example of something well thought out, well designed, based on a really solid franchise, popular franchise. When you go and neglect those things, and sometimes certain ad agencies don't have the level of expertise that a full development group would have, and it ends up feeling more like I'm collecting coupons. I'm not really somewhere doing something. I'm just kind of clicking and I'm getting coupons. So I get the benefit from it, but I'm not really going somewhere. And that's where budgeting, scheduling, resource management, in terms of the people who want to implement a gamified experience, have to think in terms of, it isn't just a question of making sure everything's connected. How am I connecting to it? If I'm still just kind of clicking a button and looking at a list of stuff and clicking another button, that's not game. That's essentially interactive phone numbers and a phone book. I don't really have, I can kind of enumerate a few things where I've seen ad games or advert games that they get an initial boost when it's launched and people say, oh, this is cool. And then they experience it and then it drops off almost immediately. That's an aspect of poor gamification where the experience has not been thought out. The idea is you want to have a bit of exploration, a bit of discovery, a bit of reward for discovery, and then dependent upon how you focus the competition between users, where you actually can create team gameplay or individual gameplay, and you specifically design these things so that I need you guys for us to move to the next level. We all have to succeed together to move to the next level. Or I'm just shooting past you and I'm the top of the leaderboard and I don't have to interact with you. Those are things that all have to be thought through and dependent upon the franchise, like Star Wars as an example, or Indiana Jones as an example. Star Wars, it's a group of heroes. Indiana Jones, it's a hero. He might have a helper or two, but for the most part, it's not a gang of heroes. Avengers, gang of heroes. Ghostbusters, group of guys, So you have to cooperate to go forward. So those are important aspects of design, specifically if you want to create the sense of a community gameplay. That's even more involved, where there's direct milestones and locations and efforts that must be had as a community to get things done. And that creates a whole other experience when the entire community that goes to do something accomplishes that thing. That is a feeling so much better than just being the top of the leaderboard as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
Can I jump in there, Graham? Just a question. I'm loving those. You talked about three concepts there, Matt, about community, engagement, and content. And yes. I think in the whole focus we have on tourism and how we bring tourism to life through immersive worlds, I'm really interested in how we can leverage some of this thinking to create something that is more than what we already have, not denying the greatness in these tourist attractions, but creating something that is more, and maybe more because it's with other people, maybe it's more because you're getting a deeper level of engagement or understanding, or because you're interacting in a gamified way. I think it's super interesting about how we can really add a layer on top of tourism. I'm not sure quite how we do it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so many layers that can be placed on tourism. One of the things that I took a course in Indian temple architecture at University of Pennsylvania in 2014. I was prepping for my master's, and I was talking with the professor about, there's these wonderful temples like Mysore in India that no one can get to, that you really have to struggle to get there. To have a virtual experience of going to Mysore and seeing the temple and really seeing it and exploring it and gaining that knowledge, and then using it not only as a teaching tool at university level, but as a tourist tool. When I went to various locations in Europe or Asia, having that knowledge and that experience of the guide, but in an interactive way, not just with the voiceover or the translation or whatever. You're going through the temple and you're actually seeing a ritual enacted in augmented reality. You know, you're getting an understanding of what the symbols mean. What are all these bodies carved into the wall? What is this that I'm looking at? What is the cultural aspect of it? What is the context of it? And then directly tying into it, something that we discussed, um, when you play a game within that universe, okay, you're quizzed on things. But let's say there is an aspect of whether it's a temple or a cathedral or some other marketplace, a Roman marketplace, the Forum, where you get points because you are able to find something, again, the game, the treasure hunt, and you find something and you see something and you get the history of this particular artifact, whatever it is. And because you got to it first and you got this information, you got a point or you got some kind of prize. And by the end of the Forum walkthrough, you not only have expanded knowledge, expanded experience, but a little bit of benefit. And we were joking about it when we first got on the call. I get a free gelato because I knew what era this particular roadstone was from the Roman Empire. When I went to Florence, my wife and I came down from our apartment, and of course there's the Renaissance Florence, which is what we were exploring. But then the stone on the road, which was a Roman stone, telling you that there had been culture and existence here since way back. It's the same thing if I'm going through a park, let's say Yellowstone or upstate New York, and I'm going through a ravine and there's a creek and I find an artifact of indigenous peoples. And there had been indigenous peoples here for tens of thousands of years. It's like going anywhere in the British Isles, where you have this aspect of 40,000 years of history. So you may be looking at the modern museum, you may be looking at the, something from 500 AD, and then all of a sudden you're looking at something from 10,000 BC. Mm-hmm. And being able to immerse yourself in that, where I'm not just wandering through the countryside, I'm actually discovering the treasure that's embedded there as my adventure. I'm not just reading the brochure, I'm experiencing, one of the things we talked about in terms of Manhattan, and I would think we would do with any tourist city, is that we have the ability to give you a time machine. I would love to go to the neighborhood in New York City in Harlem where my grandparents had their house and my mother was born and the church that they went to. They don't exist anymore because they've been built over. But to be able to go into an AR experience and dial in 1920 and see what was going on in that space that's perfect. That's what game can give us.
Matt, you highlight.
Go on, David. Sorry.
You highlight a number of potential ideas are popping off in my head of levels and layers of interaction. You could get your passive, albeit interested visitors to a location who are, in augmented reality, for instance, virtual reality, asking questions about a location. What is this? Where's the origin of this? And being rewarded for their inquisitiveness, effectively earning experience points, which we're familiar with in gaming, but they really are generating experiences. Then at another level, people that have content, you were talking about the historical content there. One of the things that we're looking at in Miami is adding in historical content through photography and early videography into locations that can then be pinned to those locations for other people to then access and see what it was like in the 20s or in the Art Deco period or whatever that is that interests them. And then at the final level might be the curation side, because you get people that they wish to leave a trail. They don't just wish to leave content. They wish to say, okay, this was my journey, and this journey was based on either the Roman influence through the British Isles or the path taken by a certain athlete when they were passing through that, whatever might interest different people. And that's your curation level, and all of these could potentially be gamified and rewarded in different ways, I guess.
Absolutely. And when you talk about the curation, we have the ability, my account, quote unquote, I may be tracing my ancestors through my, absolutely doing so every time I take a trip. I'm not just going where I know my family's been. I'm going where I know my ancestors came from Africa and, out into the Middle East and Mesopotamia, and then over into India, and then up into Siberia, and over into, there's a reason why we live on this planet. We're of this planet. So having the experience, not just tourism to buy a ticket and go enjoy, food that you never had before, but to specifically go to San Fratello in Sicily and see the cuisine and the culture of my ancestors directly, uh, and understand that coming from that particular location on the Greek side of the island, from Greece and Anatolia and Mesopotamia and Georgia, Armenia area of Asia, that there are cultural aspects of this journey. When I go to Turkey and I'm on the coast, and realizing that the Trojans, there's a historical aspect of this, that the Trojans came and the Greeks came, and why were they moving, and why am I here in America? And you just kind of go through all this stuff, and you have this curated history. I do a lot of the ancestry.coms and others to actually have it embedded in the experience in the locations as an aspect of the curation is just phenomenal knowledge to carry with one.
And
Yeah,
and a lot of this is what we had as the basis for the Mayaverse as well. I mean, my wife is half Nahuatl, Native American, and when I look at the history of Mexico and the whole Aztec and Mayan history, none of those places exist in terms of livable spaces. You can visit ruins, but you can't actually go and experience what life was like. Now, if you gamify it, you can recreate Mexico City as it used to be as Tenochtitlan. You can bring Chichen Itza and all these other cities back to life. And the thing that I've seen recently that I really like is the use of AI to bring non-game playing characters to life. So the idea that you could be having a conversation with Martin Luther King, I mean, you would never be able to do that now in real life.
no,
But an intelligent AI avatar that utilizes the voice of Martin Luther King is the closest equivalent you could come to. And I have certainly a few questions for Hernan Cortez, who's the conquistador that came to this region of Mexico. And in fact, when we go out on a Sunday for our breakfast, we go to a place called Palacio Cortez, which was his home, his colonial home in our city. And I would love the idea to be able to physically go there in virtual reality and speak to Hernan Cortez and get his perspective on what it was like coming to Mexico, etc. And I think there's so much power in bringing history to life with this.
and what's nice about AI and gamification, you can have a conversation with Montezuma. You can get it from his perspective, what's going on and who are these people and what's this about. When you go into any cultural setting, what's nice about this experience is that you can give all sides of that. If you come into Mexico City and you're seeing, the ancient city, and then you see the procession of Montezuma when he met Cortez, and you're actually able, in certain cities, they actually reenact these things, but you can actually see this aspect of it. Is extremely educational in terms of culturally understanding each other. Besides that, with the AI, which is an amazing technology, being able to do immediate translations where you may be from Yugoslavia, well, not Yugoslavia anymore, from Croatia, and you're not necessarily fluent in Spanish. You come to go experience Mexico City through this, and it's speaking to you in Croatian, You can hear, instead of having to read, anything, you're actually hearing it in your own language and translate it instantaneously, which I think is, we're getting past Babel. One of the things that has been a big problem for us, not when we're embedded in the culture, we can pick up the languages pretty easily, because language, even though we speak English, and I'm happy to speak English, I also spoke Sicilian and Italian and Spanish, during the course of my life. But there is this ability to make you culturally experience what's going on and not have any barrier between you, because that's the biggest difficulty in all human interactions and immersive aspects of things, is getting it so you're experiencing it as, the individual actually there. Because at that point, you're not looking at a translation, you're not thinking about it as a translation, you're thinking about it as an experience. And I think that Mexico City is phenomenal. Edinburgh is a location that has impacted this world and the modern world in such a way. As I've mentioned to you in the past, I would love to go and experience it in a way where I can see the technologies that came out of Scotland. Why Scotland? Why? And how that influenced the science, the technologies of the modern world. Most people don't think about it. But it's the same way if I think about the first empire of Assyria in Mesopotamia, and find out through DNA trace that that's where my ancestors were at a particular point in time. That to me is an extremely emotional experience, to be able to say I am directly connected through this wonder of interaction, and I guess you would call it role playing. I'm role playing myself, but I'm in an interaction that is giving me not only intelligence, information, not only knowledge in terms of things to, oh, that's cool, but things that I can actually practically understand, and then the experience directly, because I'm not there by myself, and I'm actually somewhere. And that's something that what we're talking about gives people that essence of knowledge and experience that we get in normal, untechnical interaction with human beings.
Do you think that experience is going to be enough in this immersive world, or do we need a purpose? I'm worried that we end up building these fantastic experiences. We go and speak to these people, we get that, and we have that, the wow proposition. You go in, you get it, you go wow, and you never go back. And within a period of time, you've forgotten it. I have the sense that we need purpose. I'm not sure points and purpose is somewhat conflicting in my head. I don't know. They're slightly different. Go on, David. You've got.
Can I frame that slightly differently? Because Matt not only has the background in gamification, but also clearly is very well travelled. So let me put this question to you, Matt. Which locations have you been to where learning about maybe the history of the location or the background of the location made you want to go back?
Every one of them. Every one of them. And I'm not just pandering to you. Every one of them. Because my wife and I chat about it. We go back and we see more. We see things we didn't see before. And it's a cumulative experience. We're talking about going back to Rome and to Florence. Now, we were in Florence for a full month, and we were a half block from the baptistry, and Medici Chapel was right outside our kitchen window. So we were embedded in that experience. But we can't wait to go back, because it's just like anything else. When you read a book, and some books I've read multiple times in my lifetime, I'm reading it from a different perspective. Even though it's me at 60, it's me at 13, it's me. It's the same way when you go to southern Spain. I went to Spain in 72, and I spent 9 months there and pushed a Volkswagen Beetle all around Spain My brother was stationed in Madrid. We stayed, and then we traveled. There wasn't anywhere on the Iberian Peninsula we did not go except for Portugal. We didn't have passport for visa for that. But everything that we experienced, and I want to take my wife back because she hasn't directly experienced that. So I've got this curated knowledge that I've been telling her about for years, and then we're going to have the direct experience together. So I look at it and say it's not just purposeless experience, it's cumulative experience, knowledge, information, interactions. When I remember Sevilla at dusk, and we're sitting there and we're having Coca-Cola and tapas because we weren't old enough to be drinking. And my father took the photograph of us silhouetted against, the sunset. That, when I think of Sevilla, I think of that image. And so it becomes this embedded experience. I remember the tapas. I remember how Coca-Cola tasted different because it was pure cane sugar. It wasn't, the formula that we had in the States. It tasted different. Another aspect of a memory, going to Benidorm near Malaga in the Mediterranean for the first time in my life, and putting my feet in the sea of my ancestors. That becomes that memory. So again, if it answers your question, there is this curation of developing experience and volumetric experience. I could see the same thing at the same museum 20 times and see something completely different.
That's interesting because that kind of ties into a positive application of the Dunning-Kruger effect for anybody who's not familiar with that in learning. The less you know about something, the more you feel like you can master it. So you're like, oh, I know, I've learned my first chord of guitar, I'm therefore a master at guitar. And the more you learn, the more you realize you need to learn. So your confidence in that knowledge goes down. But with learning about a location, it gets you into that Dunning-Kruger curve where you start to learn a little bit more, but you become aware of how much more there is to learn. And because as hunter-gatherers and, curious monkeys, we not only have the urge to roam and see pastures new, but we also have the urge to learn. And this ties into that. And thinking about it from a psychophysiological perspective, that's a dopamine hit right there, which ties back into the gamification thing, the rewards mechanism in our brain, and the reward there is learning and learning more. I remember I was in Andalusia, again in the Iberian Peninsula, and I was reading a book called Driving Over Lemons, which was about a guy who moved to Andalusia and started a small hill farm there. And interestingly, he was the first drummer of Genesis. And when he arrived there, and it was called Driving Over Lemons because when he was driving through, he was trying to avoid all the lemons on the road. And they said, no, here we drive over lemons. But he was giving us all the history in this book about how aquifers were, put in place by the Moorish conquerors of the world back when they were in control of it. And I was seeing these aquifers that had allowed them to have agriculture in what would otherwise be a dry arid landscape, and I understood it and I wanted to know more, and we ended up having a fascinating journey because of that. And without that book and reading it there, my experience would have been much less. It would have just been a holiday in a sunny place.
Well, on the subject of Dunning-Kruger, I'm currently having it now about organising live streams. It seems to be going quite well, but one of the things you learn is time flies, and unfortunately, I think time has flown sufficiently that we need to come to an end. But I think it's been a fascinating discussion, and I certainly think it's a discussion we can come back to. Especially as we develop Site Network and we develop Metahatton and we see how these things actually evolve into actual experiences. So just to close, a couple of final thoughts from the three of you before we finish. Damien, starting with you.
Brilliant conversation. Lots of interesting ideas. Thank you, Matt, so much. Just hearing all your experience and consolidating it. I think for me, I take this very interesting question over is the experience enough, or do we need a purpose? And do we need to maybe bring those purposes together? And that links a little bit to David's point around the narrative. When you're reading a book and you're in a location, it has more meaning. So how do we create that level of meaning? It's not just a wow factor. So I think that I'm really interested in actually what can we do. Graham, I know previously you've talked about trails and adventures and sort of cumulative, you're getting points, you're going somewhere, you're feeling your self-fulfillment because you're actually, there's something around that in what we're building, which I think is really interesting. And the second point, just briefly, was around how we can use the immersive space to create images that become baselines for memory. So, Matt, your point around the photograph that got taken of you as a family, and that becomes your memory.
Correct.
And then, interesting. So, if we can create immersive visualizations that are so strong that people actually go, God, I remember when I went to 19th century Paris. Oh no, I've never been there. Well, I have, because I've got that image where we, so I think there's something in that idea of creating images or memories based on digital ideas. It sounds very Blade Runner, but yeah, really interesting. So yeah, lots to take away. Thank you.
Yeah.
My take on it would be perhaps, we learned something from social media, and that is that you get different levels of involvement, different types of involvement that people are drawn towards. Some people are there to absorb. You call themselves lurkers. They don't contribute, but they observe everybody else, and that keeps them coming back. Some people, like me, I like to put stuff there. I like to share things with people, And then some people go a stage further, and they want to create entire journeys. And this, because this is a spatial medium rather than just a digital medium per se, allows for even more flexibility with that. And perhaps the gamification is really just the nudging people in the direction of doing their first contribution, whether that be asking a question about a location, receiving information, whether that be adding information from their own family history or photography or whatever research they've done, or whether that be curating their first journey. Just incentivizing that first time could be the first domino that pushes over all the others. And that we may be just naturally drawn to continue without needing to be pushed.
And Matt, one final thought for the audience, a key takeaway about gamification?
Absolutely. Directly addressing that idea from a game perspective is when you have quests in game, there's a reason why you're doing what you're doing. And if we are able to engage the users in a way that, are you doing an ancestry trail? Are you doing a historical trail? Are you doing a cultural cuisine trail? What is it that you want from the experience? And we curate based on, essentially, I want to go to Hawaii to surf and to scuba dive and to do things. Okay, what about the people? What about the culture? What about the history? Are you interested? And we kind of, through that, prepping you for the adventure, we kind of create out of whole cloth and your responses, your experience menu, what we're going to give you in terms of access and purpose, what Damien's talked about. What is the purpose of the experience? You help us define that as a user. And then we take you through it, and then you expand upon it, where you may end up in 5 different purposes because of your choices, but you went in with a thought, you came out with thoughts, you came out with multiples of that original experience you were expecting. And that's always when you travel, you end up feeling, wow, I didn't expect that. And that's what the engagement is. That's what the exploration is. That's what the discovery and the reward is all about.
And with that, Matt, thank you very much for joining us. And we'll see you all on the next episode of This Week in the Metaverse very soon.